Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another video. And today's will be really short. As many of you guys know, my wife and I are expecting our second child next month, which sounds absolutely crazy to say. So we've been super busy getting ready for things. I've been focusing a lot on the second channel because it's kind of blowing up right now and I want to make sure we take advantage of that. So I want to thank you guys for being a very receptive audience, for not complaining or anything about the slightly lesser upload quantity. It's really a down season for Star Wars YouTube as well. Expect me to be, back up to daily uploads in the winter. With that being said, today's video is a bit of a shorter one, and we will be looking at the Tector Class Star Destroyer, which was a ship that first appeared, sort of, in Star Wars Episode 6. So a couple of days ago I made a post asking why Star Wars ships don't generally fly upside down. And of course, upside down is sort of imaginary when we're talking about fighting in a vacuum, but I think most of you probably get what I mean. Star Wars ships are always sort of oriented in the same general direction. In that video, I sort of talked about the Tector Class Star Destroyer, which was kind of retconned to appear in Return of the Jedi. So let me explain the sort of backstory here, what the Tector is, the lore that's popped up to explain the ship after the film, and everything else. So if we look at the Battle of Endor, the scene in question featuring the Tector Star Destroyer comes right after the Rebel fleet engages the Star Destroyers at close range to try to avoid the firepower of the Death Star. We see the Millennium Falcon fly over what appears to be the body of a Star Destroyer in a pretty long shot. And if you're not really paying attention, you won't really notice anything here. However, especially if you know what a Star Destroyer looks like, you will notice a couple of things, and especially the fact that this supposed Star Destroyer doesn't have the typical terraces. The Falcon flies across its surface and it's almost completely flat. So from a filmmaking perspective, this is a bit of a weird scene, because why would they just have some random model lying around that's not an Imperial Star Destroyer, which they would use to fly over? Practically, it may have been because the scene looked really good with the Falcon flying in a straight line and the sort of vast background, but it's still really odd. I mean, how new is this model? Is this an adapted Star Destroyer? What's going on? Well, the interesting thing is, if you look at the Tector here, there are a lot of little details that match the underside of a traditional Imperial Star Destroyer, but there are also some really weird exclusions. So we do have that little negative space right in front of the hangar. I don't even know what that's called. Maybe it's where the tractor beam projectors are or something. It's almost like the space between two opened plates, I guess. But there are some differences as well. Even in this particular part, it does look like there's maybe more armor covering the negative space. However, that difference is pretty minor compared to what comes next. This ship doesn't have the large main hangar, which, as we see in even A New Hope, should be right after this point, and it's also missing the ventral bulb, the large protrusion on the bottom of the ship. What happened probably is that ILM took this Imperial 1 or 2 Star Destroyer base, changed it slightly, sort of kit bashing it, put stuff over the hangar, removed the reactor bulb, and there was a nice sort of scene for the Falcon to fly over. And while that may have been it from a filmmaking perspective, there's definitely a lot more going on behind the scenes that has been really fleshed out by authors and the expanded universe lore. So taking in mind the similarities of this ship to the underside of the ISD, the explanation created was that the Falcon was flying over a Star Destroyer that's upside down. The explanation for no reactor bulb or large hangar is because this Star Destroyer is not in fact an Imperial, but what's called a Tector class. This change was first made by Curtis Saxton in the Revenge of the Sith cross-section book, but has been confirmed by other sources in both Star Wars Legends and the new canon. Interestingly, and I'll have to admit I didn't know this before looking at the Wikipedia page for this ship, the Episode 6 novelization shows that it may have even been the intent of the filmmakers for the Falcon to be flying over a belly of the ship in this case. Either way, the lore for the Tector after this point was that it was essentially meant as an even more combat-focused version of the Imperial Star Destroyer. That's why there's that extra armor to help protect against vulnerabilities. The hangar is probably replaced with that additional reactor space. and generally the Tector would be more specialized for capital ship combat with the expense of certain new added vulnerabilities. You'd need to have the Tector protected by corvettes or something because it has no fighter complement of its own. How practical is that for the Empire to build? Well, in my opinion, the Tector isn't really needed. The ISD was already outgunning almost anything else in space, and the Empire was losing a lot more ships to starfighters than they were capital ships, so the Tector is a bit of a step in the wrong direction, in my opinion. Unsurprisingly, the Tector has always been a sort of oddity of Star Wars lore and hasn't really featured importantly in many or perhaps any stories. Interestingly, in Legends at least, the Tector wasn't the only non-Imperial class Star Destroyer which appeared at the Battle of Endor. We don't know much about the other two ships other than that they were called the Ithmar's Fist and the Pride of Tarlandia. But guys, as I said, this would be a short video and this is all I got for you today. What do you think of the Tector Class Star Destroyer? Do you think upping an Imperial Star Destroyer to an even more ridiculous level makes sense? If so, how would you outfit the Tector besides for covering the hangar and making the reactor bulb more protected? How would you add to the general design? And on another note, what do you think of the idea of making this ship a Tector? Should they just leave it as an oddity of the movie? Do you think it's necessary to explain every little weird scene? Or are you just happy it's in there? Let me know all of that and more down in the comment section. Just a reminder guys that I will be filming an episode of Tapcaf Transmissions tonight on EckhartsLadder. We will be discussing book 2 of the Bane trilogy, which I know is a favorite for many of you, so if that sounds interesting, consider tuning in. Until then though guys, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.